Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya. Today I'm going to be talking about the uniqueness of Bhagavan and his teachings. This is, of course, a vast subject which I can't do justice to in 45 minutes, but because everything about Bhagavan is unique. But I will touch on a few aspects of Bhagavan, but highlight his uniqueness. First thing to understand is who is Ramana, who actually is Bhagavan. Many devotees consider Bhagavan to be an incarnation of some particular form of God, Subramanya or Shiva or whoever. That is fine, particularly in the early stages of devotion. If we are much devoted to some particular name or form, whether to Krishna or Subramanya or Jesus or Buddha or whatever, when we first come to Bhagavan, we naturally think Bhagavan is a manifestation of our favorite God. But as our devotion grows deeper, our devotion to Bhagavan grows deeper, all the other names and forms drop off. In one verse in Ramnanyana Bodham, Mudgana expresses it very beautifully. I don't have a verse with me, but the gist of the verse is, it is not that I do not know that all gods are one, but in spite of knowing this, my heart will only go after the divine form of Shiva Ramanan. So that is, the more our love for Bhagavan grows, the more all other names and forms get removed. If at all Bhagavan is said to be a manifestation of any god, the most, he is a, Bhagavan and Arunachala are one and the same, as he made clear in so many ways. So to understand what is Bhagavan, we need to understand what is Arunachala. Though Arunachala appears outwardly in the form of a hill, what Arunachala actually is has been revealed by Bhagavan in so many verses of so many places in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam. That is, Arunachala is the supreme space, the ultimate space of pure awareness in which everything appears. This has been expressed by him very beautifully in the second verse of Arunachala Pancharatnam. In Sanskrit, he says, Tve Arunachala Sarvam, Bhutva Stitva Pralina Me Tachitram, Hridayam Aham iti Atmataya, Nityasi Boste Vadanti Hridayam Nama. That means, in you, Arunachala, all this, which is a mental picture, comes into existence, is sustained, and is destroyed. As oneself, you dance in the heart as I. For you, they say the name is heart. That is, all forms, forms of God or forms of the world or forms of the jiva, all are just a picture, but comes into existence, is sustained, and is destroyed only in Arunachala. So Arunachala is the supreme space in which all this appears. So all gods are contained within Arunachala. All worlds are contained in Arunachala. All jivas are contained in Arunachala. But though we are all contained within Arunachala, he is ever in our heart. As Bhagavan says, he, as our own self, as Atman, our own self, he is dancing in our heart as I. That means he is that which is always shining in our heart as I. Therefore, heart is his name. That is, when Bhagavan talks about heart, he is referring to the very center. What is the center of everything? The center that contains everything. That is Arunachala. So that is the heart. Likewise, in Tamil, he says, Chitirama Mishdalam Semalaye Nimbale, Uttidamai Nindre, Odungidamal, Nityamum, Nanendridaya Nadituduvayalum Pe, Tanidayam Endriduvatam. That is, he addresses Arunachala as Semale, that's a red hill. Red hill. all this, which is a mental picture, arises, stands, and subsides only in you. Since you dance eternally in the heart as I, they say your name itself is heart. So Arunachala, though it appears outwardly in the form of a hill, it is actually the ultimate reality, the pure awareness, our own real nature, that which in which everything is contained and which is shining in our heart as I. So Bhagavan expresses that very beautifully here. Then what is the why then does Bhagavan worship the form of Arunachala as the when Arunachala is that which is shining in our heart as I? Why does Bhagavan point out to the form of a hill? As he says in verse 4 of Ulujunapadu, Uruvam Tanayin Ulhu Paramatram. If oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? So, so long as we take ourselves to be a form, God also seems to be a form. So when we are looking outwards away from ourselves, we are experiencing ourselves as the form of a body. So when we look outwards, Arunachala appears in the form of this hill. This is expressed very beautifully by Bhagavan in the second verse, third verse of Arunachala Ashtakam. Ninayan uruvena veniye nanna nilamise malayanam nilayine nidan. When I approach you thinking of you as a form, you yourself stand as a hill on earth. Unnuru aruvena ena unnidil vinnokura ulahu ale tarum oruvanain okum. If one thinks of your form as formless, one is like someone who wanders about in the world in order to see the sky. That is, so long as we are thinking, we are aware of ourselves as a body. And if we try to, when we are aware of ourselves as a form, we cannot, the formlessness is just an idea. We cannot actually experience form so long as we experience ourselves as a form. So Bhagavan says, if one thinks, that means the mind is working. So if we think of Arunachala as formless, if we try to meditate on Arunachala as formless, one is someone who wanders about the world in order to see the sky. That is, the sky is the ever-present space is sky. But if we take the sky to be something far away, over the horizon, we can wander all over the world and we'll never reach the sky. So Bhagavan is saying, trying to conceive of, trying to form a mental conception of Arunachala as formless is futile. So how do we experience the formless nature of Arunachala? In the third line, he says, Unnuru Vonalara Unnide Munne Aru Munne Uru Sakare Uru Ena Uru Oyam. That is, when without thinking one thinks, that is Unalara unnida, thinking without thinking. What does he mean by thinking without thinking? So long as our attention is turned outwards, we are thinking. When our attention is turned back within to I, we are meditating on I, but without thinking. That is all. The more our attention is fixed on I, the more all mental activities subsides and we remain as I. So he said, when one thinks without thinking of your form, that implies when we attend only to I am, which is your true form, one's own form, in other words, ego, our separate individuality, will cease to exist like a sugar form placed in the ocean. And then he ends, and then in the last line he says, Eneyan arivura ennuru veru edu. That is, when I know myself, what else is my form? Implying, when I know myself, what am I other than you? Um, uh, and then he addresses Arunachal, and then he ends by saying, Irantane Aruna Vangiri Ena Irandoi. You who exist as the great Aruna hill are. That implies you alone are. What actually exists is only Arunachala. So though Arunachala appears outwardly in the form of a hill, the true nature of Arunachala is the pure awareness that is always shining in our heart as I. That is why I said, if we are to identify Bhagavan with any god, Bhagavan is Arunachala. And Bhagavan himself identified himself with Arunachala when he was asked in a verse by Amritanath Yatendra. Amritanath Yatendra wrote a verse in Malayalam asking Bhagavan whether he's a manifestation of this god or that god. He lists several, I don't know the exact meaning of the verse, but he asks, are you this god or that god, basically. Bhagavan replied in a Malayalam verse that he later translated into Tamil. The Malayalam verse and the Tamil verse are very similar, but I'm only familiar with the Tamil verse, which is always sung at the end of Arunachala Stuti Panchakam. This is the most beautiful verse, because in this verse, Bhagavan reveals who he really is and how we can know him as he really is. That is in the first line of this, first two lines of this verse, he sings, Ariyati Tara Jivara Dahabari Jaguhayil Arivairami Paramatuman Arunachala Ramanan. This, he refers to himself as Arunachala Ramana, because Arunachala and Ramana are one and the same. There's no separation, no difference between them. When we see the forms, they seem to be two different forms, but actually Arunachala, the form of Arunachala is Bhagavan in the Ramana, Bhagavan Ramana in the form of a hill, and Bhagavan Ramana is Arunachala in human form. They are one and the same Paramavastu. So in this verse, he says, Arunachala Ramana is Paramatma. Paramatma means the ultimate self, the supreme spirit, that what we all actually are. So Arunachala Ramana is Paramatma. Arivai Rami, that is rejoicing or existing blissfully as awareness in the cave of the heart lotus of all different jivas, beginning with Hari. That means all in the heart of all gods and all other jivas, that which is shining as pure awareness, as a fundamental awareness I am, that is Arunachala Ramana. So he is always a shining in our heart as I. But how then are we to know him? That he reveals in the last two lines. He begins the third line by saying, Parival ulam uruha. That is the most important word, because that means heart melting with love. We can never know him as he actually is until our heart melts with love and we give ourselves entirely to him, because knowing him is nothing but being swallowed by him. As he says in verse 21 of, as he concludes verse 21 of Uladunaptu, Unadal Khan, being food alone is seeing. That is, only when we are swallowed by him do we truly know him. And in order to be swallowed by him, we need to surrender ourselves. And we will only surrender ourselves completely when our heart melts with love. So he begins the third line by saying, Parival ulam uruha, with heart melting with love. Nal paran andidu guhe andu, reaching or merging in the cave where the sublime supreme dwells. That means in the cave of our heart where he dwells, merging there. Arivam viri tirava, the eye that is awareness opening. Nijam arivai, you will know Nijam. Nijam means what is innate or what is one's own, our own real nature. It also means what is true or what is certain. So we will know for sure Arunachala as our own self, Arunachala Ramana as our own self. And then he ends by saying Adu Veliyam. That is, it literally means it will be exposed. It will be outside. It will be. It means it will be exposed. It will. that is, it'll show when we know ourselves as we actually are, that will be revealed and that will swallow us, is the implication. So who is Arunachala Ramana? Arunachala Ramana is nothing but that which is always shining in our heart as I. So Bhagavan is that way, and not only is he shining in our heart as I, he's shining in the heart of all gods as eyes, beginning from Hari, he says. So from the highest God, he is that which is shining in the heart of every sentient being. He's shining in our heart as I am. That is the uniqueness of Bhagavan. I mean, that is, what more can we say about the uniqueness of Bhagavan? He said it all. But his teachings are equally unique. About his teachings, there are two particular points I want to dwell on. Firstly, what he revealed about the true nature of Guru, and secondly, how he identified the root of all problems that we face is ourself as ego. Only when we rise as ego, all this comes into existence and all problems are there. So the solution is to investigate this ego, because when we investigate this ego, it is destroyed. I will talk about that a little later. First, I want to talk about the uniqueness, what Bhagavan has revealed about Guru. That is, in almost all spiritual and religious traditions in India, there are what are called sampradayas, that is, lineages of gurus. That is, for an example, Adi Shankara, he established 4 or 5 lineages of gurus. That is, when when the Shankaracharya of a certain mat passes away, he has a successor, and it goes on and on. This is and this is so in all in the Bhakti sampradayas, whatever sampradayas there are. Even Guru Nanak, he had there were 10 gurus or 9 gurus after Guru Nanak. So it's there in almost all Indian spiritual traditions. It's this idea of a sampradaya. In the case of Bhagavan, there is no sampradaya. Why is that? Because what Bhagavan has revealed about Guru, Guru is not just a person. Guru is our own self. Guru is that which is shining in our heart as I. As he says in the 12th paragraph of Nana, God and Guru are in truth not different. So God and Guru are not two different things. There is only one God, there is only one Guru. But Guru, so Guru is that which is always shining in our heart as I. However, because our mind is outward, is looking outwards, what we're all seeking is unalloyed happiness. But the unalloyed happiness that we're seeking is actually our own real nature, but we are all seeking it outside. So because we are seeking that happiness outside, it is necessary for Guru to manifest outwardly in human form in order to tell us to turn within. So the function of the human form of Guru is to turn us within. Bhagavan has fulfilled that function. That is, he lived for 54 years in Tiruvannamalai, giving the same teaching from beginning to end. He was repeating the same thing. Know yourself, turn within. Who is asking all these questions? Who is having all these problems? To whom does all this appear? He's constantly turning our attention back towards ourselves. And fortunately for us, Bhagavan, many books have been are there in which Bhagavan's answers to questions have been recorded, but so that the answers Bhagavan gave to questions were suitable answers that were suited to the questioners, but so that we have a permanent record of the very heart of his teachings, he himself wrote his teachings in works like Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, Uludu Napadu, Upadeshundya, Nana. Though Nana was originally answers to questions asked by Shiva Prakasham Pillai, It's such an important work, but Bhagavan rewrote the question and answers in the form of an essay, and he added the first paragraph as a completely new paragraph. That wasn't part of what he said to Shiv Prakash Pillai. So that is Bhagavan made a point of writing Nana himself, so that we have an absolutely definitive version of his teachings, and he's expressed. That is if we want to go to the very heart of Bhagavan's teachings, the three most important works are Uludunapdu, Nana, and Upadeshundya. The basic principles of Bhagavan's teachings, he's set out in a systematic way in these three works. But in all of Bhagavan's writings, all of his original writings are very, very precious. So he has left his teachings. So these teachings will be available even after 1,000 years, even after 10,000 years. So he has fully fulfilled the function of an outward guru. So there was no need for him to leave a sampradaya. If at all anyone was qualified to be Bhagavan's successor, I mean, of course, there's no need for Bhagavan's successor. If anyone had been qualified to be Bhagavan's successor, it would without question have been Murugan. But after Bhagavan left the body, so many people used to come to Murugan and say, Swami, will you be my guru? He would get very angry if anyone asked him. He'd say, what are you asking? How can I be guru? Bhagavan alone is guru. Bhagavan is the guru of all of us. Bhagavan is the guru of all gurus. So who am I to be a guru to anyone? So when even Murugan declined that role of guru, that is emphasizing that Bhagavan is the eternal guru. If we want an outward form of guru, Bhagavan has pointed to his own guru, Arunachala. Giri Yuruvahi, Kirupe Kadale, sorry, that wasn't the verse I meant to quote, but anyway, Kutra Mutrarutani Gunamai Panital, Guru Vuruvayali Arunachala. Bhagavan explicitly says his guru is Arunachala. So if we want a form of guru, Arunachala is the form of guru there. And also Bhagavan is still available to us in his pictures and his special presence in Ramanashram. But he's also shining, most importantly, he's shining in our heart as I. Nowadays, people often think that a living guru is necessary. So sometimes people used to ask Sadhu Om, is a living guru necessary? Sadhu Om said, yes, living guru is absolutely necessary. But what do you mean by a living guru? If you take a living body to be the living guru, that living guru will one day be a dead guru. Such a living guru is useless for us. We want an ever-living guru. The ever-living guru is Bhagavan, because though he appeared in that human form, he is not that form. Bhagavan's primary teaching is that I am not this body, I am not this person that I seem to be. So he is always shining in our heart as I, and his teachings are always pointing us back within. So there's no need for any other guru. Nowadays, there are some people who claim, I belong to the Ramana lineage. There is no such thing as Ramana lineage. There is no, we are all his children. There's no lineage at all. He is the one guru for all of us, and he'll be the one guru even after 10,000 years. And what is the function of the outward form of guru is to turn us back towards ourselves. So Bhagavan never encouraged people to worship his outward form. When his Jayanti was first celebrated in 1912, he mildly rebuked the devotees by composing two verses. Today I posted an article on my blog about these two verses. What he says in these verses, in the first one, he says, what is birthday? You who make a great celebration, only that day when, carefully attending to where we were born, we are born in the substance, in Porul, the vastu, the real substance, which always shines as one without being born and dying. That day is only that day is when we are born. Thus is the real birthday. And in the next verse, he says, instead of weeping, weeping for having been born, at least on one's birthday, cherishing a birthday as a festival is infatuation, like adorning a corpse. And then he says, understanding this, only subsiding, being aware of oneself is real awareness. That is, tane onandu odongal, tane onavu. So that is only turning our attention within to know ourselves and thereby subsiding back into our source. That alone is real awareness, real knowledge, true knowledge. So, of course, Bhagavan understood that when we celebrate his birthday, we are doing it out of love for him. So Bhagavan doesn't discourage that love, but he takes every opportunity possible to turn our attention back to back within, because the real form of Bhagavan is that which is that pure awareness which is always shining in our heart as eye, but is always available to us. As an example of how he always turned people's attention away from himself back towards themselves, there was a devotee of Bhagavan called Janaki Mata from Tanjore. She often used to come and visit the ashram. One time when she was visiting the ashram, she saw Bhagavan returning from the Gosala, from the cow shed. Bhagavan often used to go to the Gosala to see Lakshmi and the other cows. So one day he was returning from the Gosala, and only one or two people were there. So she thought this is a very good opportunity. She approached him, she fell down at his feet, and she held her feet and put her head on his feet. And he looked down at her with a smile, and he said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I am holding the feet of my guru." And Bhagavan said, "This form is not your guru. This form is perishable. This body is perishable. And these feet are perishable. If this were the form of your guru, your guru would be a perishable guru. But the real feet of your guru is that which is shining in you as I. Cling to those feet. They alone will save you." So whenever anyone wanted to give importance to Bhagavan's outward form, he would turn us back. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be devoted to his outward form. Of course, we all love Bhagavan. We can't help loving Bhagavan when he's brought us such a priceless treasure. How can we help but love him? But he tells us that the real way of loving him, the best way to love him, is to turn back within. As he says in verse Upadeshundiya, Anya Bhavatin Avanahamahum, Ananya Bhava Mayundi Para, Anatanam Uttamamunti Para. That is, when we are worshipping Bhagavan's outward form, that is Anya Bhava. We are taking him to be something other than ourselves. But better than that, Avanahamahum Ananya Bhavam. That is, the Ananya Bhava means meditation on what is not other. That is, Bhagavan is none other than ourself. He is our own real nature, our own self, that which is shining in our heart as I. So with that conviction that Avana Aham Ahum, that he is I, meditating only on nothing other than ourselves, that's on I alone, that is Anatanam Uttaman. That is the best of all. So Bhagavan is always trying to push us. That Bhagavan doesn't discourage the devotion to the name and form, because Bhagavan himself worshipped the form of Arunachala. If we see Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, Bhagavan has beautifully woven that Anya Bhava and Ananya Bhava are both beautifully mixed there. That is, Bhagavan is both worshipping, so many verses we can take it, Bhagavan is worshipping the form, he's also worshipping the true form of Arunachala, which is that which is shining in us as I. Because so many verses give double, we can interpret in both ways. And both ways are appropriate, because Bhagavan says, so long as we take ourselves to be a form, God will be form. So it's appropriate to worship him in form, but it's appropriate for him to push us back, to turn back within. That is the function of Guru. I also briefly want to say what Bhagavan has taught us about grace. just like he taught us that Guru is that which is shining in our heart as I, he taught us that grace is that which is shining in us as I. In one verse in Guru Vachaka Kavai, in verse 966, he says, I won't say the exact meaning, I'll paraphrase it. That is, he says, when God is so, that the implication is, God is so gracious, but he is making himself always available to us by shining in our heart as I. So when he is so gracious to make himself available by shining in our heart as I, to accuse God of being ungracious is always a false, an unjustified accusation. That is, he is always gracious. He's always shining in our heart as I. Then Bhagavan said, the accusation of being ungracious is applicable only to the jiva who fails to turn within and lovingly worship him in the heart by attending to him, adoring him in the heart as I. So we are the ones who are ungracious. As Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, the grace of three people are necessary: the grace of God, the grace of Guru. That is, they are always abundantly available. The grace that is lacking is the grace of the jiva. That is, we must be willing to surrender ourselves to him. So in the same way, Bhagavan said, it's we who are lacking grace because we are not turning within. So grace is that which is shining in our heart as I. So Bhagavan's grace is always available to us. But in order to avail ourselves of that grace, though it's always there, we need to surrender ourselves. How do we surrender ourselves? As he says in the first sentence of the 13th paragraph of Nana, Anma Chintane Tavira, Vera Chintane Kalambavataku, Satram Idum Kodamo, Atmanishta Paranai Irapade, Tanai Isanaku Alipada. That is only being Atmanishta Param, that means being firmly established as oneself, is giving oneself to God. So how to be firmly established as oneself? That is what he explains in the beginning. Anma Chintane Tavira, Vera Chintane Kalambavadu, Satram Idum Kodamo. That is, we need to be so keenly self-attentive. That's the implication. Atma Chintana literally means thought of oneself, but it implies self-attentiveness. We need to be so keenly self-attentive that we give not even the slightest room to the rising of any other thought. So when we are so keenly self-attentive, but we give no room to the rising of any other thought, that is giving ourselves to God. That is surrendering ourselves to Bhagavan. So only when we cling firmly to self-attentiveness are we yielding ourselves to the grace, which is always abundantly available, because he's always available, shining in our heart as I. So I'm running out of time. So now I want to come to what is the very core of Bhagavan's teachings. That is, Bhagavan is that which is shining in our heart as I. But we, instead of being attending to him only, our attention is going outwards towards all other things. So there appears to be many things. What actually exists, as Bhagavan emphasized so many places in Arunachal Stuti Panchakam, you alone exist. Undoru Porolaru, that is, there's only you, the one Arivoli, but he says in the sixth, he begins the sixth verse of Arunachal Ashtakam by saying, Undoru Porul Arivoli Ulamei Ni. That is, you, the heart, alone are what exists. You are that is, all these are, Oruporo means the one substance, the one real substance. Arivoli, the light of awareness, that is the heart, that is you, and that alone exists. So as it's said in the Upanishads, what actually exists is ekam eva advaitiyam. That means one only without a second. So though there's one only without a second, all this multiplicity seems to exist now. And so we are facing so many problems. So what is the root cause for this appearance of multiplicity? In the older texts of Advaita, it is said avidya, ignorance is the cause. Bhagavan doesn't contradict that. Yes, ignorance is the cause for all this appearance of multiplicity, but Bhagavan expresses the same thing, but in a more practical way. He says ego is the root cause of everything. In verse 26 of Uludanapadu, he says, Ahandayundayin anatamundaham. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. That is, all this multiplicity, it appears only because we've risen as ego. Ahandayin drel indru anatam. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahandaya yabamam. Ego itself is everything. Adalal yadu idu endru nagale overall yavamen or. Therefore, know that investigating what this here means ego, what this ego is giving up everything. Because when we investigate ego, ego disappears and everything else will disappear with it. So Bhagavan isn't contradicting that. The older texts are right in saying avidya is the problem. But what is avidya? Bhagavan says avidya is the very nature of ego. That is, for whom is avidya? It's only I am ignorant. So that ignorance, what avidya means, ignorance of our own real nature. It's only when we rise as ego, but we are ignorant of our real nature. So avidya is the very nature of ego. But if we think of avidya as the problem, that's something other than ourselves. Bhagavan says, no, you yourself are the problem. You as ego, you are the problem. Not only are you the problem, you are also the solution. Because how do we rise as ego? He explains very beautifully in fact, the whole of his teachings, he summarizes beautifully in verse 25 of Uludunapatu. He describes the ego as Uruvatra Peyahande, the formless phantom ego. Why is it formless? Because it has no form of its own. Why is it a phantom? Because it has no substance of its own. As he said in the previous verse, verse 24, Jada udul nane nadu. This body is insentient, so it's not. It doesn't say I. There, say is used metaphorically. The body is not aware of itself as I, because it's jada. And what Bhagavan means by body is not just the physical form, all the five sheaves, as he says in the 5th verse, Urul Panchakosa Uru. The body is a form composed of 5 sheaves. So all the 5 sheaves, that means the physical form of the body, the life, the prana, the mind, that's the grosser functions of the mind, the manomaya kosha, the vijnanamaya kosha, the intellect, and anandamaya kosha, the will, the chittam. All these 5 sheaves, they're all jada. As he says, he also says the same in verse 22 of Upadeshundya. All 5 sheaves are jada, therefore they're not I. So ego is neither this jada body, nor is it satchit, because satchit udiyadu, as he says in verse 24. So it's neither the body, nor is that. So it's neither the form, nor is it the substance. It is, but it's a spurious entity, but rises between these two. Between there means metaphorically. When he says in between, he's using that metaphorically. There's not literally a space between the form of a body and satchit for it to rise, because satchit is the substance, body is a form. So the substance that appears as all these forms is only satchit. But metaphorically, he says, it rises in between. Why? Because it takes on the properties of the body, the limitations of the body, and the substance. It borrows from satchit, that is the awareness. As ego, we are aware. So, but we are taking ourselves to be this jada body. So we are chit jada granti, as he says. So he says, the one thing called I rises as the extent of a body. Know this to be chit jada granti, mind, bondage, ego, this samsara, etc. The subtle body, jiva. So all these are only this spurious I, but rises. So as I say, in verse 25, he says ego is a formless phantom. So how does this formless phantom come into existence? Well, ultimately, there's no explanation, because if we investigate it, we'll see there's no such thing. But the nature of its coming into existence is revealed by Bhagavan. He says, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikam, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongam, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Uruvittu urupatram, leaving one form, it grasps another form. So the very nature of ego is grasping form. Since ego itself is formless, whatever forms it grasps are things other than itself. But in order to grasp any form as itself, any form other than itself, it must first grasp a form as itself. As he says in verse 4 of Ulanapadu, Uruvam Tanayin, Uruhu Paramatran. So only when, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. So ego must first identify itself as a form. So it first takes the first form it grasps is the form of a body, which it takes to be I. And having taken this form of a body as I, it then grasps other form by attending to other forms. That's what he means by grasping. Attending to things other than ourselves is grasping form. So that is the nature of ego. So from that we can understand the nature of ego is, firstly, it's grasping. Patrudal. Patrudal means the attachment, grasping. That is desire or attachment is the very nature of ego. And what does it desire and attach? Forms. Because only when it grasps form can it stand. Without form, it cannot stand. But, so, nature of ego is attending to things other than itself. But the most important sentence in this verse is, Teidinal otum pidicum. If sought, it takes flight. What does that mean? This ego, whose nature is to grasp form, if it tries to grasp itself, if it tries to see who am I, what am I, Teidinal otum pidicum. Otum pidicum means it will take flight. That is, we seem to be ego. We rise as ego only by attending to things other than ourselves. And we stand as ego by attending to other things. And we feed ourselves and flourish by attending to other things. So attending to other things is the very nature of ego. But if this ego, whose nature is to attend to other things, tries to attend to itself, we seem to be ego only so long as we're looking at other things. When we look at ourselves, this ego subsides and dissolves and disappears. So, Teidinal otum pidicum, if sought, it takes flight. So, if we investigate this ego, it will take flight. That's why he says in the next verse, investigating what this is giving up everything. So Bhagavan's teachings are extremely practical. By pointing out that ego is the root of all problems, he has made his teachings extremely practical, and he has thereby revealed why self-investigation is the only way to get rid of ego. Because so long as we're attending to anything else, we are feeding and nourishing this, sustaining this ego. Only when we turn our attention away from all other things by attending only to ourselves will this ego dissolve and disappear permanently. As he says in verse 16 of Upadesh Undiyar, Veli videngale vittu. We need to, in order to know what we actually are, we first need to let go of everything else. But we don't have to first let go of everything else and then know what we actually are. That is a condition for attending to ourselves is letting go of other things. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent we are letting go of other things. So he says, Veli vedengale vittu, manum tan oliuru ordale. That is the mind. That mind here means ego, a knowing aspect of the mind knowing its own form of light. So when the mind turns back within to know what is this light of awareness, its mind actually doesn't know that, because when mind knows its own light of its oliuru, its form of light, is that light of pure awareness, mind is swallowed by that. So what remains? Unme unichiyam. That is real awareness. So what Bhagavan says is that the mind leaving external objects, the mind knowing its own form of light, that is real awareness. in Sanskrit, he also says it very nicely. Drisya varitum, giving up all drisya, all things other than ourselves, or not attending to anything other than ourselves. Drisya varitum, chittam. Chittam there means mind. Atmanaha chitva, its own form of light. Atmanaha is the possessive form, so it means its own form. No, he doesn't say form of light. He said chitva, its own quality of consciousness or awareness. Chittam atmanaha chitva darshanam, seeing its own form of awareness. Tattva darshanam, that is seeing the reality. So the ego, whose nature is to look outwards, needs to cease looking outwards and turn back to look within, to see who am I. When it looks to see who am I, it doesn't find any, we can't find any ego. Ego seems to exist only so long as we're looking outwards. When we look within, we find no such thing. If a rope is mistaken to be a snake, what is the way to get rid of the snake? The only way to get rid of the snake is to look at the snake very carefully. If you look at the snake very carefully, what do you see? It's only a rope. Likewise, if we look at this ego very carefully, we see, it's just pure awareness. So Bhagavan's teachings are extremely simple, extremely practical. So this is a priceless treasure Bhagavan has brought to this world. I could go on talking endlessly about this subject because I would love nothing more than to talk about. I mean, Bhagavan's teachings are so precious. But to give time to others, I will draw this to an end now. But let us remember, what is Bhagavan and what is the way to know Bhagavan? Ariyati Tarajivara Dahavari Juguhail, Arivairami Paramatuman Arunachala Ramanan. Arunachala Ramana is that which is shining as the pure awareness I am in the heart of each and every one of us. And to know him, how to know him? Parivalula Muruhanala Paranandi Guhayandu. Arivam viri tirvanijam arivaya arivalayam. Our heart has to melt with love for him, and we have to turn within and to enter into the heart where he dwells, and there we will be swallowed by him, and then this truth will be revealed to us. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Now we are going to start the program from the Arunachala Ashrama. Prashant is going to chant the Arunachala Kshanamanamalai.
Tarunarunamani kirana valinihar taruma charamana mahilmalai terunadiya teruvadiyar terumar teliya paravudal porulaha Karunakara Muni Ramanariyanuva Hainar Solliyadu Gatiyaha Arunachalamena Ahame Arivod Alvar Sivanula Halvare Arunachalavarketra Aksharamanamalai Satra Karuna Karaganapatiye Karamarole Kapaye Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா. அழகு சுந்தரம் போலகமும் நீயும் அபிநமாயிருப்போம் அருணாச்சலா. அகம்புகுந்தீர் தொன் அககுகை சிறையாய் அமர் விட்டதன் கொல் அருணாச்சலா. ஆறு காவனை ஆந்தனை அகற்றில் அகிலம் பழித்தீரும் அருணாச்சலா. இப்பழித்த புனையே நின்னை பீத்தாய் இனி யார் விடுவார் அருணாச்சலா. ஈன்றிடும் அன்னையில் பெரிதருள் புரிவோய் இதுவோ உனதருள் அருணாச்சலா. உனையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுலத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா. ஓர் சோற்றுளம் விடதுனை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டருணாச்சலா. என்னை அழித்து போதனை கலவாவிடல் அருணாச்சலா. ஏனுந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிற இழுக்க இது உன கழகோ அருணாச்சலா. ஐம்புல கள்வர் தகத்தில் நீ போகும்போ தகத்தில் நீ இல்லையோ அருணாச்சலா. ஒருவன முன்னை ஒளித்தவர் வருவார் இது அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. ஓங்கார பொருள் ஒப்புயர்வில்லோய் உனையார் அறிவார் அருணாச்சலா. அவ்வை போல் எனக்குன் அருளை தந்தனை ஆளுவதுங்கடன் அருணாச்சலா. கண்ணுக்கு கண்ணாய் கண்ணின்றி காணுனை காணுவதவர் பார் அருணாச்சலா. காந்தம் இரும்பு போல் கவந்தனை விடாமல் கலந்தேனோ இருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா. கிரியுருவாகிய கிருபை கடலே கிருபை கூந்தருளுவாய் அருணாச்சலா. கீழ்மேலெங்கும் கிளரொளி மணியன் கீழ்மை பாசை அருணாச்சலா. கூற்றமுறத்தனை குணமாய் பணித்தாள் குரு குருவாயொளிர் அருணாச்சலா. கூர்வாட்கண்ணியர் கொடுமயிர் பாடாதருள் கூந்தனை சேர்ந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. கெஞ்சியும் வஞ்சியாய் கொஞ்சமும் இறங்கிலை அஞ்சலன்றே அருள் அருணாச்சலா. கேளாதளிக்கும் முன் கேடில் புகழை கேடு செய்யாதருள் அருணாச்சலா. கையினிற் கனியொன் மெய்ரசங்கொண்டு ஐவெறி கொலவருள் அருணாச்சலா. கொடியேட்டடியரை கொல்லுனை கட்டி கொந்தங்கன் வாழ்வேன் அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. கோபமில் குணத்தோய் குறியாயனை கொல் குறையன் செய்தேன் அருணாச்சலா. கௌதமர் போற்றும் கருணை மாமலையே கடை கணித்தாழ்வாய் அருணாச்சலம் சகலமும் விழுங்கும் கதிரொளியினமன் ஜலஜமலர்த்தி அருணாச்சலம் சாப்பாடுன்னை சாந்துணவாயான் சாந்தமை போவன் அருணாச்சலம் சீத்தங்குளிர கழிர தமை தாமுதவையை திர அருள்மதி அருணாச்சல சீரையளி துணிர்வாணம செய்த சீரையளி தருள் அருணாச்சல சுக கடல் பொங்க சொல்லுணர்வடங்க சும்மா பொருந்திடன் அருணாச்சல சூது செய்தன்னை சோதியதினியுன் ஜோதியுரோ காட்டருணாச்சலம் சேப்படி வித்தை காற்றிப்படி மயக்கு துருபடு வித்தை காட்டருணாச்சலம் சேராயெழின்மை நீராயுருகி கண்ணீராற்றழிவன் அருணாச்சலம் தள்ளு செய்வினை சுடுமலொய்வகையேத அருணாச்சலம் சொல்லாது சொல்லி நீ சொல்லரனில் என்று சும்மாயிருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலம் சோம்பியாய் சும்மா சுகமுந்துரங்கிடில் சொல்வேரங்கதி அருணாச்சலம் சௌரியங்காட்டினை சழகற்றதென்றே சளியாயிருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலம் ஞமலியர் கேடா நான் என்னுருதிய நாதின் இன்னொருவேன் அருணாச்சலம் ஞானமில்லாதுன்னாசையற்றளபர ஞானந்தேரி தருள் அருணாச்சலம் நிமிரு பொனியும் மலந்தில்லை என்றே நேர் நின்றனையன் அருணாச்சலம் தத்துவந்தெரியாதனையூற்றாய் தத்துவமிடுவென் அருணாச்சலம் தானே தானே தத்துவமிதனை தானே காட்டுவாய் அருணாச்சலம் திரும்பிய அந்தனை தினமாக கண்காண் தெரியும் என்றன என் அருணாச்சலம் தீரமில்லகத்தில் தேடியொன்றனையான் திரும்பவுற்றேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலம் இப்பிற பெண் பயன் ஒப்பிடவாயேன் அருணாச்சலம் தூய் மனமொழியார் தோயும் உண்மையகம் தோயவே அருளென் அருணாச்சலம் தெய்வமென்றொன்னை சாரவே என்னை சேரவொளித்தாய் அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலம் தேடாதூற்றனல் திருவருள் நிதியகத்தியக்கம் தீர்த்தருள் அருணாச்சலம் தைரியமோடும் உண்மையகநாதயன் தத்தழிந்தேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலம் தோத்தருள் கைமே கத்திடாயனிலியன் நட்டமாவேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலம் நீயாக தோதொன்றியன்றும் சந்தோடம் ஒன்றிட வருள் அருணாச்சலம் நகை கிடமிலை நின்னாதிய என்னை அருள் நகை இட்டு பார் நீ அருணாச்சலா. நானிலை நாதித நானாயொன்றின் தானுவ நின்றனை அருணாச்சலா. நின்னேரெறித்தனை நீராக்கிடுமுன் நின்னருள் மழை பொழி அருணாச்சலா. நீ நானர போலி நிடங்களி மயமா நின்றிட நிலை அருள் அருணாச்சலா. நுண்ணொரு உன்னையான் விண்ணொரு நன்னிட என்னலை ஏறுமேன்
அருணாச்சலா.
வரியா பேதையனென்றன் மாலரி வருத்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. நேக்கு நெக்குருகியான் போக்கிடவுனை புகழ் நக்கணான் இந்திரனை அருணாச்சலா. நேசமில்லென கொன்னாசை காட்டின் மோசஞ்செய்யாதருள் அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. நைந்தளி கணியால் நலநிலை படத்தில் நாடியுட்கொள் நலம் அருணாச்சலா. நொன்னிடதொந்தனை தந்தனை கொந்திலை அந்தகனீயன கருணாச்சலா. நோக்கியை கருதிமை தாக்கியை பாக்குவம் ஆக்கினியாந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. பற்றி மால்விடந்தலை ஊற்றிரமுனமருள் பற்றிட அருள் புரி அருணாச்சலா. பார்த்தருள் மாலர பார்த்திலை எனில் அருள் பாருணக்கார் சொல்வர் அருணாச்சலா. பீத்துவி துணை நேர்பித்தனாக்கினை அருள் தீத்தம் தெளி மருள் அருணாச்சலா. பீதியில் உனை சார் பீதியில் என்னை சேர் பீதியொன்றனக்கேன் அருணாச்சலா. புல்லறிவேதுரை நல்லறிவேதுரை புல்லிடவே அருள் அருணாச்சலா. பூமன மாமன பூரண மனங்கொல பூரண மனமருள் அருணாச்சலா. பெயர் நினைத்திடவே பிடித்திழுத்தனையொன் பெருமையார் அறிவார் அருணாச்சலா. பேய்தனம் விட விட பேயாய் பிடித்தனை பேயனக்கின்னையென் அருணாச்சலா. பைங்கொடியானான் பற்றின்றி வாடாமல் பற்று கொடாய் அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. பொடியால் மயக்கியன் போதத்தை பறித்துன் போதத்தை காட்டினை அருணாச்சலா. போகும் வரவுமில் பொது வெளியினில் அருள் போராட்டங்காட்டருணாச்சலா. பௌதிக மாமுடல் பற்றற்று நாலு முன்பவி சுக்கந்துரவருள் அருணாச்சலா. மலை மருந்திட நீ மலை திடவோ அருள் மலை மருந்தாயொரு அருணாச்சலா. மானங்கொதொரு பவர் மானத்தை அழித்த விமானம் இல்லாதொழிர் அருணாச்சலா. மிஞ்சிடில் கெஞ்சிடும் கொஞ்சவரிவனியான் மஞ்சியதருளனை அருணாச்சலா. மீகாமல் நில்லாமல் மா காற்றலை கலம் ஆகாமல் காத்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. முடியடி காணா முடிவிடுத்தனை நேர் முடிவிட கடனில்லை அருணாச்சலா. மூக்கில்லன் முன்காட்டு முகுர மகாதனை தூக்கிய அருணாச்சலா. மெய்யகத்தின் மனமென் மனரணையில் மெய் கலந்திடவருள் அருணாச்சலா. மேல் மேல் தாண்டிடும் மெல்லிய சேந்துனி மேன்மையுற்றணையேன் அருணாச்சலா. மைமயனீ தருள் மையினலுனதுன் மை வசமாக்கினை அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ
அருணாச்சல சிவ
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. மொட்டையடித்தனை வேத்தவலியனி நட்டமாதினையேன் அருணாச்சலா. மோகந்தவி துன் மோகமவை துமென் மோகந்திராயேன் அருணாச்சலா. மௌனியாய் கற்போல் மலராதிருந்தால் மௌனமிதாமோ அருணாச்சலா. யவனின் வாயில் மண்ணினையர்த்தி என் விழை பொழித்த அருணாச்சலா. யாருமறியாதென் மதியினை மறுத்தி எவர் கொலை கொண்ட அருணாச்சலா. ரமணன் எந்துரைத்தேன் ரோஷங்கொள்ளாதென்னை ரமித்திட செய்யவா அருணாச்சலா. ராபகலில்லாம்
வெறுவெளி
வீட்டில் ரமித்திடுவோம் வா அருணாச்சலா. லட்சியம் வைத்தர் அஸ்திரம் மீத்தனை பட்சிதாய் பிராணனோ அருணாச்சலா. லாபனீக பர லாபமில்லனையுற்ற லாபம் இன்னூற்றனை அருணாச்சலா. வரும்படி சொல்லிலை வந்தென் பரியல் வருந்திடுந்தர் அருணாச்சலா. வாவென்றஹம்புக்குன் வாழ்வருளன்றே என் வாழ்விழந்தேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலா. வீட்டிடில் கட்டமாம் விட்டிடாதுனையுய் வேட்டிட அருள் பொறி அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. வீடு வித்தீர்த்துள்ள விட்டு பொக்கு பையவுன் வீடு காத்தினை அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
வெளி வீட்டன்
செயல் வெறித்திடதுன் அருள் வெளி வேட்டனை காருணாச்சலா. வேதாந்தத்தே வேரற விளங்கும் வேத பொருள் அருள் அருணாச்சலா. வைதலை வாழ்த்தா வைத்தருள் கொடிய வைத்தனை இடதருள் அருணாச்சலா. அம்புவிலாலி போல் அன்புரு நிலனை அன்பா கரை தருள் அருணாச்சலா. அருணன் அருள் கனி பட்டேனுன் அருள் வல்லை தப்புமோ அருணாச்சலா. சிந்தி தருள் பட சில்லந்திப்போல் கட்டி சிறையே தொந்தனை அருணாச்சலா. அன்போடு நாமங்கள் அன்பர்தம் அன்பர் கண்பனையிடவருள் அருணாச்சலா. எம்போலும் தீனரை இன்பொரு காத் என்னாலும் வாழ்ந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா என்பொரு அன்பர்தமின் சொர்க்கச் செவியுமே பொன்மொழி கொலவருள் அருணாச்சலா பொறுமையம்பூதர பொன்சொலை நன்சொல பொறு தருள் இஷ்டம்பின் அருணாச்சலா மாலையளி தருணாச்சல ரமணயன் அருணாச்சல மாலையளி தருணாச்சல ரமணயன் மாலையளிந்தருள் அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. I am Mohan Ramaswamy from Arunachala Ashram. What a beautiful program that's going on. We are almost half the way, and without any hitch from Bhagwan's grace. The very thought of doing a global Jayanti celebration, which is a byproduct of the pandemic, but in the way the technology has worked, and we are very grateful to Bhagwan to shower his blessings on this special day. I am going to read an extract from Self-Realization by B.V. Narasimha Swami. Chapter 25, A Day at the Ashram with the Swami. He starts a quote from the Kalidasa's Shakuntala. Solemn stillness reigns in this abode of hermits. The animals here, emboldened by their confidence, hear the human sounds with unaltered peace. Let us peep into the ashram of Ramana Maharshi to watch its daily life. There are special days in which the ashram is very busy, when it attracts very large numbers, such as the Kartikai festival, the Jayanti day, that is the Maharshi's birthday, and the anniversary of his mother's ascension. On the last two occasions, over 8,000 of persons are fed. There is special and prolonged puja in the Mathrubhuteshwara temple, which is but the tomb of the sainted lady. And generally, the piper's Nagaswaram or other music is always heard. On his birthday, the Maharshi is visited by large numbers of resident and non-resident disciples, and he is placed amidst numerous garlands and festoons on a decorated dais, and the loving disciples swarm to his feet and spend some hours in his company. There is feasting with choice of delicacies and plenty of other dishes which serve to remind all of the blessed day which ushered this great, benevolent, and enlightened soul into this world. There are a few things to note about Maharshi's conduct on these special days. When thousands are to be fed, he is apprehensive that nice things will be provided and all the dishes served only for the first or second set of persons who sit for their meal, and that the last set may be given nothing or only a few diluted sauces and tiny bits of the nice things. More than 400 or 500 cannot be accommodated at a time, and the total number fed sometimes goes up to 2,000 or more. So he refuses to sit up for his meal till the last set is served. His unvarying principle when anything is prepared at the ashram or brought up by any votary for pleasing his palate is never to touch anything unless there is a sufficient quantity to go around. That is to offer at least an equal share with himself to all present in the premises. Someone brings up occasionally a cup of very nice Turkish coffee or a little halwa and says to the Swami, "It is very good, so Swami may take it." The Swami immediately answers, "Why do I want this? Am I not quite happy without it? If I am to take anything, all must take it." And the proffered article is returned without being tasted or is offered to the dogs or other animals present. The Swami is never elated at a bounteous banquet or depressed at a Spartan fair. In fact, one vow of his at meal makes the former rather trying to him. He is observing, perhaps from the days of his boyhood, the rule never to throw away anything served on his plate, but patiently to consume all things served. He would certainly be better off if he reversed his rule and ate only what was absolutely necessary and rejected all the rest. But that is the outsider's medical advice, which ignores the sentiments that underlies the Swami's vow. Another noticeable feature of the Swami when he sits at a feast or dinner is that he impartially inquires and sees to the supply of all present, even the poorest and the meanest, if meanest among men can exist in his presence, before he begins to take his meal. If anyone will not take the food, he offers him fruit or something else that he can take. One more fact about these special occasions may be noted: all pompous and grand arrangements in reference to the Swami's own person he avoids. In fact, in 1912, when the first celebration of his birthday was being arranged for by his devotees, he objected, giving his reasons in a couple of stanzas, which he then composed in Tamil. Number one, yeah, that wish to celebrate the birthday, seek you first whence was your birth. That indeed is one's birthday when he enters that which transcends birth and death, the eternal being. Number two, at least on one's birthday, one may mount his entry into this world. To glorify in it and celebrate it, on the other hand, is like delighting in decorating a corpse. To seek oneself and merge in the self, that is the wisdom. The devotees' insistence that they required it to satisfy their needs and that the Swami may remain unconcerned prevailed. And ever since, the Jayanti celebration has been held every year. Similarly, when Perumal Swami and some others desired to have a life-size bronze statue of the Swami, he did not raise any objection to the creation of such an aid to devotion, though he didn't care to have a statue. Consequently, one was made at a great cost by the artist Nagappa and has recently been installed in the town of Tiruvannamalai. Some other swamis have a regular abhishekam and puja, that is, the pots of water, milk, curds, oil, honey, sandal paste, etc., are poured over them as they are on a daily basis. The Swami does not even permit camphor to be lighted or coconut to be broken before him, as it is before, never to light or to do anything in front of him. But he cannot always have his views respected by others, strangers, and overzealous admirers who fail to see the reason for the above rule violate it not infrequently. They daily light up the camphor, break the coconut, and praise him with 108 epithets or names as they praise any god. When they go to the virginal at the ashram, they fail to see why the virginal should not be worshipped in exactly the same way. Often, however, some disciple in attendance dissuades such votaries and succeeds mostly in saving the Swami from the ordeal. As for the Pada Seva, the actual touching of the Swami's feet and carrying the dust or washed water thereof to the votary's head and pouring fulsome praise in his ears, attributing to him omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, etc., the Swami submits to all this. It is the sacrifice he has to make for service of the world, the Loka Sangraha, suiting oneself to the needs and ideas of the world. As the Bhagavad Gita in the chapter 3, it says, the votary cannot rise high in his spiritual flight unless he idealizes his guru and transfigures the physical guru into something high, into the divinity. The closing sentence of Shveteshwara Upanishad, which means these teachings of the Upanishad will shine forth to be readily understood and realized by him who has faith in the Ishvara, the Lord, and the same faith in his teacher as in the Lord, distinctly encourages the identification of the teacher with God or Brahman by the aspirant in his struggle for realization. Though to the realized people, the Gnani, all distinction of himself, God and Guru ceases. Hence, the Swami does not damn the ardent votary spirit in any matter felt to be essential for the latter's advancement. Gradually and gently, however, every votary is made to see the Guru's point of view also. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Now, we'll put the recording. Please go ahead.
பார்வலர் கயிறை பருப்பத நீங்கி
பார்வலர் கைலை பருப்பத நீங்கி
பார்வலர் கயிறை பருப்பத நீங்கி
பார்வலர் கைலை
பருப்பத நீங்கி பண்ணவர் சூழலை விட்டு
மன்னவர் சூழலை விட்டு
வாரொளி மணி போல் வாசகர் வாக்கை
வாரொளி மணி போல் வாசகர் வாக்கை
வளர்த்திவி மடுத்திட விரும்பி
வளசெவி மடுத்திட விரும்பி
ஏர்வளர் பெரும் தண்டு உரையடைந்தார் போல்
ஏவலர் பெரும் தண்டு உரையடைந்தார் போல்
இழிசினேன் புன் சொலும் வேட்டு
இரிசினன்
புன் சொலும் வேட்டு சீர்வளர் அருணை செழும்பதி சேர்ந்தாய்
சீர்வளர் அருணை செழும்படி சேர்ந்தாய்
தேசிக ரமணமாதேவே
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 தெருக்கடை அலைந்து திரியுனாய் போல
திருக்கடை அலைந்து திரியுனாய் போல
தெருக்கடை அலைந்து திரியுனாய் போல
திருக்கடை அலைந்து
திரியுனாய் போல தேர்ந்ததே தேர்ந்ததே தேர்ந்து
தேர்ந்ததே தேர்ந்ததே தேர்ந்து
பெருக்குடை எல்லா பிறப்பினும் பிறந்து
திருக்குடை எல்லா பிறப்பிலும் பிறந்து
பெரும் துயர் எழுமைகள் உழந்து
பெருந்துயரிடும் கைகள் உழந்து
கருக்கடை கதியா காத்து நிற்பேனை
கருக்கடை கதியாய்
காத்து நிற்பேனை கடை கணித்து யான் எனது என்னும்
கடை கணித்து யான் எனது என்னும்
செருக்கர ஒழித்து திருப்பதம் அளிப்பாய்
செருக்கர ஒழித்து திருப்பதம் அளிப்பாய்
தேசிக ரமணமாதேவே
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 Now Varun Subramaniam is going to chant. Varun.
मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कार चित्तानिनाहं न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायुः चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायो न वा सप्तधातुर्न वा पञ्चकोश न वा पाणिपादं न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहः मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभाव न धर्मो न चार्तो न कामो न मोक्ष चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुण्यं मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोजं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे मृत्युशङ्का न मे जातिभेदा पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धो न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्य चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूप विभुर्व्याच सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न च सङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेया चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम्
Thank you, Varun. It was so nice. Now, Ravi Ramaswamy is going to chant the Sadarshana Bhashya.
सत्प्रत्यया किं नु विहाय सन्तं हृद्यैष चिन्तारहितो हृदक्यः कथं स्मरामस्तममेयमेकं तस्य स्मृतिस्तत्र दृढैव निष्ठा मृत्युञ्जयं मृत्युभियाश्रितानाम् अहं मतिर्मृत्युमुपैति पूर्वम् अतः स्वभावात् तेषु कथं पुनर्मृत्युधियोऽवकाशः सर्वैनिदानं जगतोऽहमश्च वाच्य प्रभुः कश्चिदपारशक्तिः चित्रेऽत्र च विलोकिता च पटप्रकाशोऽप्यभवत् स एकः आरभ्यते जीवजगत्परात्मा तत्त्वाभिधानेन मतं समस्तम् इदं त्रयं यावदहं मतिः स्यात् सर्वोत्तमाहं मतिशून्यनिष्ठा सत्यं मृषा वाचिदिदं जडं वा दुःखं सुखं वेति मुदा विवादः अदृष्टलोकानिरहं प्रतीतिः निष्ठा विकल्पा परमाखिलेष्ट स्वरूपबुद्धिर्जगतीश्वरे च स्वरूपधीरात्मनि यावदस्ति अरूप आत्मा यदि प्रपश्येत् सा दृष्टिरेका नवधिर्हि पूर्णा यत्पञ्चकोशात्मकमस्ति देहं तदन्तरा किं भुवनं च कास्ति देहं विना पञ्चविधं तदेतत् पश्यन्ति के वा भुवनं भणन्तो शब्दादिरूपं भुवनं समस्तं शब्दादिसत्तेन्द्रियवृत्तिभास्य सत्तेन्द्रियाणां मनसो वशे स्यात् मनोमयं तद्भुवनं वदाम धिया सहोदेति धियास्तमेति लोकस्ततो धी प्रविभास्य एषः धीलोकजन्मक्षयधाम पूर्णं सद्वस्तु जन्म क्षयशून्यमेकं भवन्तु सद्दर्शन साधनानि परस्य नामाकृतिभिः सपर्याः सद्वस्तु निप्राप्त तदात्मभाव निष्ठैव सद्दर्शनमित्यवेहि द्वन्द्वाणि सर्वाण्यखिलास्त्रिपुट्यः किञ्चित् समाचित्य विभान्ति वस्तु तन्मार्गणे स्यात् गलितं समस्तं न पश्यतां सञ्चलनं कदापि विद्या कथं भाति न चेद विद्या विद्या विना किं प्रविभात्य विद्या द्वयं च कस्येति विचार्य मूला स्वरूपनिष्ठा परमार्थविद्या बोधारमात्मानमजानतो यो बोधस्य किं स्यात् परमार्थबोधः बोधस्य बोध्यस्य च संशयं स्वं विजानतस्तद्वितयं विनश्येत् निद्रा न विद्या ग्रहणं न विद्या गृह्णाति किञ्चिन्न यथार्थबोधे निद्रा पदार्था ग्रहणेतरा स्यात् चिदेव विद्या विलसन्त्यशून्या सत्यश्चिदात्मा विविधा कृतिश्चेत् सिद्धेत् पृथक् सत्यचितो न भिन्ना भूषा विकार किमु सन्ति सत्यं विना सुवर्णं पृथगत्र लोके तद्युष्मदोरस्मदि सम्प्रतिष्ठा तस्मिन् विनष्टे स्मदिभूलबोधात् तद्युष्मदस्मन्मतिवर्जितैका स्थितिज्वलन्ती सहजात्मना स्यात् भूतं भविष्यश्च भवत्स्वकाले तद्वर्तमानस्य विहाय तत्त्वं हास्यान किं स्यात् गतभावि चर्चा विनैकसंख्यां गणनेव लोके क्व भाति दिक्कालकथा विनास्मान् दिक्काललीलेह वपुर्वयं चेत् न क्वापि भामो न कदापि भामो वयं तु सर्वत्र सदा च भामः देहात्मभावे न जडौ समानौ एकस्य देहे हृदि दीप्त आत्मा आक्रम्य देहं च जगच्च पूर्णः परस्य मेयं तनुमात्रमात्मा अग्नस्य विघ्नस्य च विश्वमस्ति पूर्वस्य दृश्यं जगदेव सत्यं परस्य दृश्याश्रयभूतमेकं सत्यं प्रपूर्णं प्रविभात्य रूपं विदे प्रयत्नस्य च कोऽपि वादः स्तयोर्द्वयोर्मूलमजानतां स्यात् विदे प्रयत्नस्य च मूलवस्तु संजानतां नैव विधिर्न यत्नः यदीशीतुर्वीक्षणमीक्षितारम् अवीक्ष्य तन्मानसिके क्षणं स्यात् न द्रष्टुरन्यः परमोहितस्य वीक्षा स्वमूले प्रविलीय निष्ठा आत्मानमीक्षेत परं प्रपश्येत् इत्यागमोक्ते सुलभो न भावः नात्मैव दृश्यो यदि काकतेशे स्वयं तदन्नी भवनं तदीक्षा धिये प्रकाशं परमो वितीर्य स्वयं धियोऽन्तः प्रविभाति गुप्तः धियं परावर्त्य धियोऽन्तरेऽत्र संयोजनानीश्वर दृष्टिरन्या न वक्ति देहोऽहमिति प्रसुप्तौ न कोऽपि न भूवमिति प्रवक्ति यत्रोदिते सर्वमुदेति तस्य दियाहमशोदय जन्मदेशं देहो न जानाति सतो न जन्म देह प्रमाणोऽन्यौदेति मध्ये अहं कृतिग्रन्थि विबन्ध सूक्ष्म शरीरचेतो भवजीवनाम रूपोद्भवो रूपतति प्रतिष्ठो रूपाशनो धूतगृहीत रूपः स्वयं विरूपः स्वविचारकाले दावत्यहङ्कारपिशाच एषः भावेऽहमत्सर्वमिदं विभाति लयेऽहमो नैव विभाति किञ्चित् तस्मादहं रूपमिदं समस्तं तन्मार्गणं सर्वजयाय मार्गः सत्यास्तितिर्नाहमुदेति यत्र तच्चोदयस्थानगवेषणेन विना न नश्येद्यदि तन्न नश्येत् स्वात्मैक्यरूपा कथमस्तु निष्ठा कूपे यथा गाढजले ततान्तः निमज्य बुद्ध्या शितया नितान्तं प्राणं च वाचं च नियम्य चिन्वन् विन्दे निजाहं कृतिमूलरूपम् मौनेन मज्जन्मनसा स्वमूला चर्चैव सत्यात्मविचारणं स्यात् एषोऽहमेतन्न मम स्वरूपम् इति प्रमासत्यविचारणाङ्गम् गवेषणात् प्राप्य हृदन्तरं तत् पदेदहन्ता परिभुग्नशिष्या अताहमन्यः स्फुरति प्रकृष्टम् नाहं कृतिस्तत्परमेव पूर्णम् अहं कृतिम्यो लसति ग्रथित्वा किं तस्य कार्यं परिशिष्टमस्ति किञ्चित् विजानाति सनात्मनोऽन्यत् तस्य स्थितिं भावयितुं क्षमकः अहस्फुटं तत्त्वमसीति वेदः तथाप्यसम्प्राप्य परात्मनिष्ठां भूयो विचारो मतिदुर्बलत्वं तत्सर्वदा स्वात्मतया हि भाति न वेद्महं मामुत वेद्महं मा इति प्रमादो मनुजस्य हास्यः दृग्दृश्यभेदात्तिमयं द्विदात्मा स्वात्मैकतायां हि धियां न वेदाः कृत्प्राप्य सद्धाम निजस्वरूपे स्वभावसिद्धेनुपलभ्य निष्ठां मायाविलासत्सदसत्स्वरूपः विरूपनानैकमुखप्रवादाः सिद्धस्य वित्तिः सत एव सिद्धिः स्वप्नोपमानः खलु सिद्धयोन्याः स्वप्नप्रबुद्धस्य कथं नु सत्यः सतस्थितः किं पुनरेति मायां सोऽहं विचारो वपुरात्मभावे साहाय्यकारी परमार्गणस्य स्वात्मैक्यसिद्धौ स पुनर्निरर्थो यथा नरत्वप्रमितिर्नरस्य द्वैतं विचारे परमार्थबोधेत् अद्वैतमित्येष न साधुवादः गवेषणात् प्राक्दशमे विनष्टे पश्चाच्च लब्धे दशमत्वमेकम् करोमि कर्मेति नरो विजानन् बाध्यो भवेत् कर्मफलं च भोक्तुम् विचारदूता हृदि कर्तृता चेत् कर्मत्रयं नश्यति सैव मुक्तिः बद्धत्वभावे सति मोक्षचिन्ता बन्धस्तु कस्येति विचारणेन सिद्धे स्वयं स्वात्मनि नित्यमुक्ते क्व बन्धचिन्ता क्व च मोक्षचिन्ता रूपिण्यरूपिण्युभयात्मिका च मुक्तिस्त्रिरूपेति विदो वदन्ति इदं त्रयं या विविनक्तहन्दिः तस्या प्रणाश परमार्थमुक्तिः सद्दर्शनं द्राविडवाङ्निबद्धं महर्षिणा श्रीरमणेन शुद्धं प्रबन्धमुत्कृष्टममर्त्यवाण्याम् अनूद्य वासिष्ठमुनिर्व्यतानि सत्तत्त्वसारं सरलं ददाना मुमुक्षुलोकाय मुदं ददाना अमानुष श्रीरमणीयवाणी मयूकवित्तिर्मुनिवाग् विभाति। ओम अरुणाचल शिव रमण।
Ananya Hari is going to chant now.
ரமண பதம் தரும் கருணை நிதம் தரும் ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. ரமண பதம் தரும் கருணை நிதம் தரும் ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா, சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா. அருணை மலையடி திருவெண்பதி புரி ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. அருணை மலையடி திருவெண்பதி புரி ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. சரணம் நமன குருதேவா, சரணம் நமன குருதேவா. வந்த வினை வித தந்த வினை செய ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. வந்த வினை வித தந்த வினை செய ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. சரணம் நமன குருதேவா, சரணம் நமன குருதேவா. ஞான குரு விதமோன அருள் பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. ஞான குரு விதமோன அருள் பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. சரணம் நமன குருதேவா, சரணம் நமன குருதேவா. வேத முனை பதிநாதம் தினம் பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. வேத முறை பதிநாதம் தினம் பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. சரணம் நமன குருதேவா, சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா. கள்ளமனம் வித உள்ளம் நினை பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. கள்ளமனம் வித உள்ளம் நினை பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. ரமண முனி நினை மனமே. சரணம் நமன குருதேவா, சரணம் நமன குருதேவா. சரணம் நமன குருதேவா, சரணம் நமன குருதேவா. சரணம் நமன குருதேவா.
Thank you, Ananya. So nice. Now, Lavanya is going to chant.
உமை வணங்கும் உத்தமர்த்தம் மகக்கண் காண் தமை நிறுத்து ஆத்ம வழி காப்பு. அருணை மாமுனி ரமணர் வாழ்க, கருணை காட்டும் கந்தா வாழ்க. திருமுகாக குகை திருவே வாழ்க, குரு வருவரு இரு சிவமே வாழ்க. ஒரு மலரதனை ஒன்றாயாங்கே இருமுலை நடுவென இரு விரல் வளத்தே இரு பாய் புரித்து இதயம் என்றே பொருளது தவம் தினமுனதாய் வாழ்க. ஒன்றிலே அனைத்தும் ஒன்றி என்றி பன்முக வடிவம் பற்றி கொண்டு ஓடும் எண்ணம் ஓடியாட காடும் மாறும் காவி அணிந்து போன இடத்தில் புண்ணியமிலையே மோன உளத்தில் மோகம் மறுத்து தானே தானே தத்துவம் எனவே தானே காட்டி தந்தாய் வாழ்க. மூச்சினில் கவனம் மூற்றும் வைத்து பேச்சில் ஆசை பற்றாதிருந்து புத்தர் கூறிய புது வழி அதனை பார்த்தர் யாவரும் பயில எளிதில் நானா என்றே நல்கி இங்கே தானாம் தன்னை தன்னில் காட்டி எந்தை ரமணர் எனும் மொழி வடிவில் தந்தாயா வழி தகமை வாழ்க வந்த வினையும் வந்து போக தந்த கண்மம் தாமே போகும் சிந்தை தன்னை ஜீவன் தன்னில் எந்த நேரமும் எளிதாயிருப்பில் தந்த மோன தத்துவன் வாழ்க தாயை ஊய்க தன் கை கொண்டு மாயை நீத்து மௌனம் தந்து முன்வினை அனைத்தும் மூற்றிலும் அகற்றி பின்வினை அவையும் பாற்றாவண் மூக்தி அளித்து ஒன்றாய் கூட்டி சக்தி அருளிய குஹனே வாழ்க முன்னாள் தந்தைக்கு மூக்கியின் வடிவம் ஒன்றாம் அந்த ஓமென பொருளும் பின்னாள் அன்னை பக்தி பண்ண அன்பின் வடிவில் அண்டம் வந்து துன்பம் துடைக்க தூயவன் வாழ்க அன்பே ஓத்த அழகே வாழ்க கடலில் தேங்கும் ஓடம் போல உடலில் பொங்கும் உணர்ச்சியாவும் வந்து போகும் வந்தால் போனால் சிந்தையாற்று சீற்றமாற்று வந்த பூதி மனமும் மடங்கி எந்த பற்றும் எய்தா பாங்கு துறவு என்றே தூய் தோய் வாழ்க அறநெறி நிறை மனமுதம் வாழ்க வாய்மொழி மொழிந்து வாசக மோதி ஓய்ந்த மனதை ஒன்றாய் பார்க்க மந்திர ஜபமும் உள்ளே செய்து மந்த புத்தி மலர்ந்த பின்னே மனதை தோற்றும் மூலம் தன்னை முனைப்பாய் பார்த்தால் முன்னே தோன்றும் ஓரிடம் உள்ளம் ஒன்றாய் ஒடுங்கி பேரில்ல ஓரொளி பெருமான் வாழ்க ஆன்மா கேள்வி அகுதே உண்மை தான் தான் என்ற தன்மை வாழ்க துக்கம் சோகம் தூவும் ஆசை சிக்கி உள்வரும் சிறுமை தள்ளி மனதில் கூர்ந்து ஆன்ம விசாரம் தினமே போதும் தொல்லை எல்லாம் தாமே செல்லும் தந்தாய் வாழ்க நாமே நம்மில் நாமாய் வாழ்க நானே செய்வேன் நாச்சியாகந்தை தானே வீட்டு தானா அங்கே சும்மா இருவன உமது போதம் அம்மா அதுவே ஆழம் வாழ்க அதுவித செயல் அதுவே உத்தம மூர்த்தி நீத்தம் சத்தியின் வாழ்க கேட்டு பாடி கண்ணாய் நினைத்து தோட்டு திருவடி துதித்து தொழுது நாட்புற நடந்து நன்றே செய்து கேட்டு பக்தி என்கிற வழியில் உன்னில் உள்ள உண்மை உணர ஆன்மா பக்தி அகத்தில் தேடு நவமே பக்தி கண்மம் நியாயம் தவமே தன்னில் தினமும் வாழ்க வருவது அதுவே வரட்டும் போவது சருக்காய் போகும் அதுவே சரணம் கருமம் தானாய் அருளால் நடக்கும் பொறுமை என்றாய் குருவே வாழ்க பக்தரின் பக்தராய் உனது பக்தரின் பக்கமே பணிவிடை பக்தி பாங்கில் சூத்த சேவை செய்யும் உறுதி நித்தம் எமக்கு நன்கு செல்ல பெத்தம் தவிர்க்கும் முத்தனி வாழ்க அத்தம் பக்தர் அனைவரும் வாழ்க, பேய அகந்தை பெரிதாய் நின்றால் மாய மனது மறைத்து நிற்கும், காயம் வளரும் காமம் கூடும், நாயாய் செல்லும் நயந்த மனதை சேய எம்மை சேவித்தருளி, தாயாய் வந்த தலைவா வாழ்க, சூற்றம் யாவும் சூற்றி இருப்பின் குற்றம் காணா காரியம் பணித்தாய், மாற்ற மாற்று மரபா கவனம் போற்றி புரித்தால் புகழே வாழ்க, பார்த்த துன்பம் பார்த்து அறுப்பாய், முக்தி தரு பெரு சக்தி வாழ்க, பக்தி யோதிய பாங்கும் வாழ்க, நித்தம் காக்கும் நின்னருள் வாழ்க, வாழ்க கந்த சக்தி வாழ்க, வாழ்க ரமண பகவான் வாழ்க, வாழ்க வாழ்க ரமண பகவான். சூரிய ஒளியாய் சூத்தாத்மா பாரில் வாழும் பரமே வாழ்க, வாழ்க வாழ்க அன்பே வாழ்க, வாழ்க வாழ்க மௌனம் வாழ்க, அன்பர் வாழ ரமண கவச்சம் இன்பம் மூய்க இயற்றும் வடிவ ரமணதாசன் ரமித்து கமழும் மோத்தி சீக்கிரம் தரவே. சரணம் சரணம் ரமணா சரணம், சரணம் சரணம் ரமணா சரணம், சரணம் சரணம் ரமணா சரணம், சரணம் சரணம் ரமணா சரணம்.
Hema and Badri are going to chant now.
நமோ ரமணாயவே ஞானமும் கல்வியும், நமோ ரமணாயவே நாமரி மந்திரம், நமோ ரமணாயவே நாவு கரங்களும், நமோ ரமணாயவே நல்வழி கோட்டுமே, நமோ ரமணாயவே ஞாயிறும் திங்களும், நமோ ரமணாயவே நாள்களும் கோள்களும், நமோ ரமணாயவே நாட்கரணங்களும், நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்முள் சுடர்வதே, நமோ ரமணாயவே நான்கு நெறிகளும், நமோ ரமணாயவே நான் மறையோர் பொருள், நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்முறைவாய்மையாய், நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்பிக்கை கூறுமே, நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்பனூறு பெயர், நமோ ரமணாயவே நாளுமுறு சொல்ல, நமோ ரமணாயவே நன்புலதூட்புக்கு, நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்பனை காட்டுமே, நமோ ரமணாயவே நாத்திகர் காட்சிக்கு, நமோ ரமணாயவே நாத்தினபாதியும், நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்பினார் தங்கட்கு, நமோ ரமணாயவே நாளும் இருப்பதே, நமோ ரமணாயவே நாசமில்லாதது நமோ ரமணாயவே நான் என்பதன் பொருள் நமோ ரமணாயவே நாடினிதயத்து நமோ ரமணாயவே நன்மை பயக்குமே நமோ ரமணாயவே நட்ட நடுதரி நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்பனருள் கோடு நமோ ரமணாயவே நாடும் மகத்துள்ளே நமோ ரமணாயவே நாட்டியமாடுமே நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்பனவின்றது நமோ ரமணாயவே நங்களையாண்டது நமோ ரமணாயவே நங்கள் விழு துணை நமோ ரமணாயவே நங்குரி நாட்டமே நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்மொழிவது நமோ ரமணாயவே நம்மையொழிப்பது நமோ ரமணாயவே நாமாயொழிவது நமோ ரமணாயவே ஞானமே இன்பமே நமோ ரமணாயவே யாதுரு நேயமும் நமோ ரமணாயவே ஞான விளக்கமும் நமோ ரமணாயவே ஞான முழுமையும் நமோ ரமணாயவே நங்கள் ஸ்வரூபமே நமோ ரமணாயவே நங்கள் ஸ்வரூபமே